Agency is a mindset. Agency is not something we are necessarily fully born with. We have agency over our agency. Are we attached to what others think about us? Are we attached to not feeling a certain way? Are we attached to feeling a certain way? Are we attached to something not happening? These clingings that we have make us more and more fragile.
Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Garry Tan, where he says, "Intelligence is on tap now, so agency is even more important." As a shaper, because we did this psychological profile analysis, if you remember, how do you think about agency and the difference between intelligence and why agency now becomes even more?
Great to be back, man. Yeah, this is a topic that I feel like is getting more and more mainstream in people's conceptual maps. What is agency? And I'm sure there are more eloquent definitions than what I'm about to freestyle, but I would frame agency as self-efficacy, or the belief that you can actually do things that will change the state of your environment or of the world, or that you have a sense that you are able to take actual decisive action independently to materialize some goal out in the world that doesn't yet exist as you would like it to be or as you envision it. This is a belief in the power of our own actions and intentions in actual manifested reality, and our ability to move things around or to ask forgiveness rather than permission, and even to break from the norm or of the limitations of people's expectations for us. And why is agency more important than ever? Why is it more central than ever? Or why is intelligence on tap? And I would contend that agency is still just as scarce as it was 10 years ago and 100 years ago and 1,000 years ago in human psychology, because we're still running ancient hardware. Although culturally, perhaps it's progressed a little bit, but our wiring for it is still very low. We're kind of all programmed in a way to be extremely fearful of being ostracized from our tribe of 50 to 100 people. And this ancient hardware that's wired in a hunter-gatherer mindset, where being kicked out of the group actually led to almost certain death, is still running in the background of our minds today. And this causes many of us to cower and shrink in the face of society's imposed limitations on us or expectations for us. But the truth is, now we are far more unlocked than we've ever been by the advent of especially artificial intelligence as well as other technologies. But what holds us back is often a paper tiger, often something that feels like it's real and limiting in front of our face, but actually we can just lean right through it and pass beyond it in many cases. And so if we have the ability to collaborate with AI to create a plan to do something in our lives, whether it's just, I want to sleep better, and so I'm going to make a plan and figure out how to identify the issue, and then figure out the root issue, and then go get something to solve that root issue and run experiments and really move forward to solving it. Or we can have a low agency mindset, which is just, I have this challenge with something going on and I'm a victim of it, and I'm limited by the circumstance in which I find myself. Now that we have the ability to manifest a plan that can work to solve a lot of problems, what holds us back is not having the option to solve problems much of the time, or to at least make progress on the most important things in our life much of the time, but rather our capacity to view the world around us as malleable to our will and to our energy, into the force that is generated from within us. And so if I have low energy and I would like high energy, do I just surrender and accept without movement what is already the state? Or do I take action to move something from one place to another? And this doesn't obviously just apply to our internal states, it applies to our environment, our relationships, the situations we're in, etc. Do we have a mindset of agency in these things? Or do we have a mindset of victimhood toward these things, or just relegation to the status quo of the ways that things are, or what society expects things to be like? And now that there's these technologies, now that there's these intelligences, now that these powers are in our hands and so ubiquitous, the scarce resource that makes the difference much of the time is our stance, our mindset, our initiative, our life force that we pour into what's in front of us, and our belief in our own power to shape what's going on around us and within us. How would you talk about agency or think about agency, and how can we cultivate such a characteristic?
Great to be back with you. And as you said, it's the belief that you can shape things the way you can imagine them, the belief that the world is a malleable place. And even if we look around, everything we see which is not grown was made by someone, even by some hands in a factory, but the factory got assembled by someone with a vision, because there are some invisible forces, some kind of, as Adam Smith would say, it's an invisible hand shaping these things into being. I find it quite fascinating that a few people who have really high agency and a really great vision and translate that into focused actions, they can influence the outcomes and the lives of so many people. And every entrepreneur probably is reminded of Steve Jobs and the level of focus which Steve Jobs brought to the table. I sometimes see interviews of people who worked with him, people who then spun off other companies and so on, and they all seem to talk about the enormous level of focus that he had. I try also to reproduce the focus, but my mind is constantly curious about this and that, and social media doesn't make it easier.
Hmm.
And this is the malice of our time, I guess, that we have all the best at our hand, but also all the worst. We have like intelligence on tap, but also dopamine rush on demand and on tap. And we don't even wanna do it ourselves. We just open up the phone, and if it's not blocked, then the thumb instantly glides toward the icon and then presses it and then scrolls the infinity pool. And this is to be hacked back. There's a good book by Nir Eyal to that. It's called Indistractable. I think it's time to get to some core lessons of that book again. One thing about it is to hack back. It's like to make a contract with yourself to get in certain times of the day, and then don't only honor the contract but also build a systemic wall around that through digital balance profiles in your smartphone. So back to agency, mindset definitely matters, like you said. And you can tell that because you bought some storage units, you bought a business, you increased the sales of the business and try to shape these things into existence because you believe in your ability to figure things out. Now, what helps you most when you believe things, and what makes you able to remain in that state of belief?
It's a great question. I almost would invert it and talk about what holds us back from having a full belief in ourselves. What holds us back from taking risks and stepping out of the boat and subjecting ourselves to the potential pains and losses of what could happen when we step out of the boat and expose ourselves in these ways, or what prevents us from having agency to try to claim responsibility and efficacy over what's going on in our situations. I would say that a core one, I think that many of them come down to fears and the things that fears are rooted in. This is what often relegates us to meek acceptance of a reality that is unright for us, or in some way not what we are called for in this moment. And when I think about that, the exemplars of agency, if I were to think of the highest agency people in history, who would come to mind would be Socrates, Jesus, and the Buddha. And all three of these people totally abandoned what society expected for them and went sharply contrasted. They followed their own inner compass, and they had this obvious recognition of a different plane of reality, a different level of existence. They were not tied to tightly grasping onto their own life, even. If you look at Socrates on trial, all he had to do was to say that this thing that he didn't believe was true was actually true, and they would have let him go. Even at his own death, he easily could have gotten out of it by compromising his integrity, but he did not conform to what was expected of him. He stayed 100% true to what he believed was in integrity for himself. And these, I think, are aspirations for us in our own life as we seek to follow our own internal compass in the face of the pressures that are put on us from the outside. And our identity is oftentimes our identity, our self-image, our self-narrative. This is oftentimes the nose ring of the bull that has ropes around it that are tied to it that can pull us in one direction or another by the fragility of our identity, the ways that we want to cling on to our self-image or the opinion that other people have of us or the perception that other people have of us. Ultimately, I don't think it's possible to be extremely high agency if we are attached to seeing ourselves in a certain way, and certainly not to other people seeing us a certain way. Care about other people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. This
Mm.
is core to agency or lack thereof. And so I would say that letting go of needing to feel a certain way, needing to perceive ourselves a certain way, needing others to perceive us a certain way, this is the first step of claiming higher agency. This is something that all of us can do, but it's much easier said than done. And I would say the most powerful way to cut through this is to come to an experiential recognition that we are not who we think we are, that we are not bound by the stream of thoughts and narratives that occur in our minds. And we are not the thinker of the thoughts. And we are not this separate being over here that's riding around in our skull trying to navigate the world and defend ourselves that's cut off from everything else. First, if we can see our true nature and see the light that is interconnected, this can be a powerful foundation for agency. But even before that, at least we can start to soften our grip. At least we can start to be less attached to seeing ourselves a certain way, to being seen by others in a certain way. And in this, we can release the nose ring on us. And when the bull doesn't have the nose ring, he actually is much more powerful than the humans around them. He cannot be constrained unless he is bound by these things that the people around him put on him. And so this, I think, can be one way to perceive the agency in our lives. And the next question I'd say is this: why is intelligence on tap? What does it mean for intelligence to be on tap? Why is agency so powerful now? And the thought starter I'll kick it off with is this AI thing is really good at telling you how to get some results in the world. And we are, as humans, pretty good at wanting things or wanting things to be different. And so my hypothesis for you to play around with is now that we have an ability to have a good plan to do stuff, we can do much more if we just have the habit of assuming that whatever we want to be different can be different. Then assuming that we can be provided an effective plan or a set of experiments to run to change something. And then in fact, we can experience cumulative changes from these things, and that intelligence and the being provided a good plan or good experiments to run, this was the missing link for much of us, much of the time. I really didn't know how to solve most of my problems a few years ago. Now that we have access to solutions to problems, or at least access to something that can help us to arrive at solutions to problems, agency is the remaining missing link. This is the hypothesis. Does this bear out in your own experience and what you see of the world now?
Probably, yeah, because with this AI thing, we can increase the possibilities and possible insights for possible solutions, which didn't occur to us if we think through it. But also, the thing is, the step before agency, before acting out your belief, is that you think for yourself, that you think through this stuff for yourself, and only then let AI help you to increase the possibilities if you are blocked in some way where you just say, okay, how can I now proceed? And then use AI, because if you don't use it, you will lose it. This is a very important aspect of this thing which is emerging now. And also, nobody can replace your specific type of intelligence, because intelligence is not only how you can express ideas and so on, But this is there are many realms to it, and I think the human aspect of it is still very relevant. And but we have a ghost in the cloud which can tell us anytime, maybe propose a solution, a missing link to what we now want most, and then try it out in an experiment, see how it goes, and then reflect on that. So it's very powerful. But what AI can't do yet very well is to act it out in the real world. So it also has no goal because it's just a ghost who has the knowledge of the internet compressed in itself and can repeat the things very well which fall into the main parts of the distribution of the training data. So this is also what we have to have in mind, because if something is outside the training data, if something is not very well known or has not been done yet, or if there's some kind of new knowledge which hasn't been trained into the model yet, the model will never arrive to a sensible solution. Our creativity is really powerful in that regard as well. So agency is also related to how you combine ideas and discover new knowledge through the combination, jumping different layers and knowing what you know. And therefore, it is really important that you apply yourself because you are unique. And I will repeat until I'm gray and old. You are unique, and you will never be again, like you will never turn up again in the world, because it's only your genes there, and you have a unique kind of set of gifts, and it's your task to discover them and to make them shine, to uncover them from the mine and make it shine like gold. And I really like the metaphor of the nose ring for the bull, because it is like it is, and also how you connected it to the agency of, say, Jesus or Buddha, because they totally rejected the
Yes.
expectations of society. So they remained in a state of high uncertainty because they were based on a certainty within themselves, in a self-belief, because probably they saw something the others didn't see. So they got rid of their self-image and pursued their own path. They were the trailblazers. And many more, probably many more people who died we didn't hear about. But it's all about the fears which hold us back and how to overcome them, and getting rid of our self-identity and not caring too much about the opinions of others, because otherwise we will be their prisoners, like you said, is probably a good way forward. And what helps in agency is also being able to remain in a state of uncertainty.
Hmm.
Then it's not about what you know, but it's about how you deal with what you don't know. And it comes back to, how do you deal with stuff which is really uncertain? How do you deal with the stuff you do not know nothing about? Hayden, what is your approach there? What is ideas which help you in dealing with what is uncertain?
Hmm. Great pointer there, because it's really true. You have to free fall into the insecurity of not being able to control reality to truly embody agency. If we're attached to something happening exactly as we want, or something not happening that we don't want, we cannot be truly free, and we cannot be fully high agency if we're kind of fragile from our attachments to things. Another aspect of a relationship with your reality as it relates to this, and ultimately what you're reminding me of, is that agency is a mindset. Agency is not something we are necessarily fully born with, and that we can't affect. We have agency over our agency, and we slide in and out of high agency and up and down the spectrum of high agency in relation to our mindset. And our mindset shifts. Are we attached to what others think about us? Are we attached to not feeling a certain way? Are we attached to feeling a certain way? Are we attached to something not happening? These clingings that we have make us more and more rigid childhood, which make us more and more fragile. And an element of the anti-fragility or the free falling into insecurity that is related to this is the ownership that we take over our own circumstances and lives. And I liked how Jocko Willink wrote about this in just the mindset associated with it. And ownership happens when we take full responsibility for what goes on, even if it's not our fault. So I think we have to distinguish between fault and ownership. There's going to be good and bad that happens to us. Some things that are bad will happen that are outside of our control and unexpected, and it's reasonable for us to not have expected them. But finding ourselves there, taking ownership looks like I am not going to define myself as a victim of what's going on and relegate myself to just complaining about my fate in a state of self-pity, but rather I'm going to claim the fact that I am going to exercise agency over the situation now. And I am going to take ownership of the fact that I got myself here in one sense or another. Maybe I trusted the wrong person. Maybe I took a risk, and I take ownership for the fact that I take risks and sometimes risks don't go well. Maybe I'm taking ownership over the fact that I made some errors in judgment that got me here, even if I was not the sole person involved in this situation, or even if there was some wronging that happened in the world or some terrible misfortune that went on along the way. I'm taking ownership of the fact that I walked the path that led to right where I'm here now, and I alone am responsible for what I do given where I'm at now to walk a different path in the future or to orient myself in a wise direction in the future. And so this ownership mentality is the opposite of that, is trying to blame others, trying to really cast judgment on others and take no responsibility and say, I am a victim of this circumstance that is everybody's fault but me. And I am pitying myself and this is wrong and I'm just going to complain about what's going on. This actually keeps us stuck much more than we realize. It feels like almost a relief to try to push responsibility away, but it actually keeps us trapped where we're at if we're not taking responsibility for what's going on. Once again, even if it's unfair, even if it's unlucky, even if whatever, that doesn't have to be our fault for it to be our responsibility. And taking ownership and admitting the things that we did, even if there's many pieces involved, there's some things that we did that led to where we're at. There's some choices that could have been different, or at least we can say that I took a risk, and taking risks sometimes leads to good and bad outcomes. This mindset of total responsibility and extreme ownership, and the mindset that I cannot control what somebody else does, their own actions, their own judgments, their own speech, their own whatever, but I am responsible for what I do within my own actions, within my own speech, to influence or communicate or set expectations or to set boundaries or to learn from my mistakes and course correct or to change the balance of a situation that is unhealthy. I am responsible for what I do to respond to whatever is going on. This is foundational to agency. And I think that the mindset about this is something that we often have towards certain things in our lives. I think all of us naturally apply extreme ownership and a high agency responsibility towards some things in our lives. Like maybe we believe that yeah, sure. I'm totally like going to the gym a few times a week. This is something that I totally can do. I have agency, I have control. It's nobody's job but me to get me to the gym and to work out. Or maybe I have the mindset of, oh yeah, it's nobody's responsibility but me to go to bed on time and to get enough sleep. And so I can totally apply agency or responsibility there. But maybe I have the mindset of, oh, I'm in this bad relationship situation and it's all somebody else's fault and somebody else wronged me and I'm a victim of this situation that I'm in. This is totally possible for us to say, I have total agency responsibility over here, but in this area, I'm just a victim and nothing's my fault and I have no responsibility for that. And that's natural. And it's nothing we need to judge ourselves or others about. This is like totally, we're all kind of learning this slowly and starting stops together, but let us look at the cause and effect. If I have a victim mentality towards something going on, if I'm not taking responsibility over something going on, I'm giving up my agency. It's only when we take ownership and responsibility that we claim agency, that we claim an ability to do something, to change the circumstance that does not serve us. And ironically, there's this paradox that the highest agency foundation is a mindset of total surrender to reality, which is even more kind of mind blowing is that, okay, I'm taking total ownership of what's going on. I'm taking full responsibility. I'm not trying to blame other people or blame circumstances or play the victim or whatever. And I am claiming my agency and my power to shift reality, to shape reality, to move things, and to push momentum in a new way with an intention toward the future and looking forward. At the same time, I have a far greater power to exercise agency if I totally surrender to reality right now. And I totally surrender to not clinging on to a story that nothing is ever my fault and I'm always a victim, but rather a surrender that says, okay, I'm going to step back and I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see all the ways that I made decisions that led to where I'm at now. I'm going to accept the whole past, everything that I've done, everything that anybody else has done. I'm going to let go of my resistance to reality. I'm going to let go of my disagreement with reality that's out of my control, which is the present and the past. And I'm going to move with my life force, with intention, towards shaping reality in a positive way in the future. And it's sort of, on its surface at least, in language, it feels like a contradiction to surrender to reality while also claiming our highest agency to shape reality toward our highest intention. But this is the foundation for the highest level of agency, believe it or not. This is the ability to allow the source to flow and to not dictate to the light the way that it needs to show up or the way that it needs to move things or exactly the route that we have to take to get where we're going. This is the supreme agency, so to speak, is when we can let go of our own fixed plans, let go of our leaning on our own strength, and surrender to the flow and allow it to move through us with a life force and a creativity that's greater than we could ever muster by struggling with reality. Last note I'm going to leave us on from me is that agency is not, it's easy to mistake agency for acting out of impulse out of our own vice. So agency is not merely standing up to the pressures from the outside. Agency is also being free from the bondage that can arise from within. If I have an addiction to something and I am railroading somebody else to go do something to fill my addiction, I might be standing up to an external pressure, but I still do not have agency in that situation because I am a slave to my own vice. The same with our own psychological cycles. If I am caught up in some mental psychological thing that causes me to impulsively harm somebody around me out of anger or out of some other emotion, I am not actually exercising agency, even if I'm stepping on somebody else's toes, because I am not free from the forces that are compelling me to act against my own interest and against the interests of those around me. So, this is a subtle distinction. We should not deceive ourselves by thinking that following our own vices or addictions or negative psychological cycles, this is low agency in its own way. It's just an internal low agency where we're being jerked around by the nose ring from within rather than jerked around by the nose ring from without. So that's kind of the last distinction I'll draw. Any final thoughts from you on either taking extreme ownership or agency, the things that get in between it, or how we can get better at applying agency to the areas of our life where we're tempted to overlook the possibility for it?
Great question. I think taking complete ownership is also a precondition to increasing your agency. Because if you don't take the responsibility, even though if it's not your fault, then you also unconsciously state your belief that you cannot change nothing about the situation. But if you say, okay, from now on this point, I do what it takes to change the situation for the better, then you take ownership of the situation, even though if just shit happens sometimes. And now you have reclaimed your internal locus of control, where you say, I move on forward from this point in time and change the things about everything. And this is what you referred to as being a mindset as well. And there's also um, like the connection to stoicism with that, to accepting reality as it is. Sometimes people ask, okay, are you optimist or pessimist? Do you see the glass half full or as half empty? The Stoic would say, okay, I'm grateful that I even have a glass that I can see through and see the liquids I taste before I taste them. But the people with high agency say, a glass? whatever. I'm a tap. I'm a
Yeah.
tap. I can just do stuff. I can just move stuff. I can just release energy and collect energy and focus energy through telling stories, maybe through focusing people on a common vision, through drumming the beats and drumming up the people to build a ship. And like Jean-Exupéry once said that if you want to build a ship, don't tell the people to collect wood and tell them to carpent the ship. Teach them to yearn for the endless sea. Like,
Nice.
it's like this overarching meta skill of telling a story and focusing energy which is bigger than yourself onto a common vision, and then also convincing people to follow along. This is also a big kind of agency, I believe, in my opinion, because it stems from the internal conviction, from your conviction that there is something which you highly believe in, and then you act upon it. And people see that, and people feel that. And also the other way around, if you're not convinced to do something, people feel that as well. If you're talking to people, you want to sell something that you don't believe in, they instantly smell it. But also the other way around. If you're highly convicted about what you want to bring the people in terms of value, people feel it as well. With that, thank you very much for this exchange of great ideas. And I'm always inspired by you sharing the stories and inspiring me to also think about us being a tap which can generate energy, which can generate action, can generate possibilities, and then take a leap and step into the possibilities and experiment with that so that we can shape the real world around us bit by bit towards the
Mm.
vision that we like. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I can share that I'm inspired to kind of look in the mirror on where am I taking ownership over what's going on in my life versus where am I just complaining to myself about some aspect of reality and relinquishing my agency. So this is an awareness I hope to bring into the week. Timely conversation for me as always. Really appreciate your thoughts too. I will talk to you in the next one, my friend.
Talk to you soon, man. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.